Greeting to all, welcome you all. I am Muhammad Nagma Arshin, Assistant Professor, Lord's Institute of Engineering and Technology, Hyderabad, Telangana, India, and the moderator for this wonderful session. On the, be- on the behalf of InfoOB, I am very happy to welcome you all for this Global Virtual Summit 2022. And And also on the behalf of Lord's Institute of Engineering and Technology, India, we are very grateful to Dr. William Spady for creating this wonderful platform. Now I would like to introduce our session. It is on track 2, Computing, Engineering and Technology as a theme 1, Models of Learning, moving from principle to practices. Let us introduce about our honorable speaker, Professor Mahesh C. Agarwal. So Professor Mahesh C. Agarwal had 30 plus years of experience and he served as a department chairman, program director, faculty senate president, and the chair of university compensation committee many times. He is also a vice president of EASME region, vice chairperson of ASME Education Group, and chairman of numerous committees and the seminars to be named a few. Moreover, he is also initiated as and served as a coordinator of Common GE Master of Science in Mechanical Engineering. The Professor Mahesh Agarwal currently serving as a chair of college Industry Partnership Division of American Society of Engineering and Education, Chair of Diversity and Inclusion Committee of American Society Mechanical Engineers, the ABET Commissioner, Engineering Accreditations Commission Team Chair to the International Visiting Team. Over the year, more than 30 technical papers have been published. Now I would like to hand over the session to Professor Mahesh C. Agarwal, sir. Thank you.
As Nagma mentioned, that I'm Mahesh Agrawal. I'm professor of mechanical engineering at Gannon University in Erie, Pennsylvania. I have been at this institution for more than 44 years, teaching in mechanical engineering, as I mentioned there. So today we're going to talk about assessing outcomes, skills, and competencies. As far as my background is concerned, I will, for the presentation outline, I will give you my background a little bit more as related to accreditation. Then we'll introduce the subject, provide some key definitions. Then we'll talk about student learning outcomes and how they will relate to student outcomes from ABET. Then we look into the program assessment, and a program assessment will be done using the rubrics. We'll talk about different type of assessments, what we can use. We'll develop some rubrics. We'll give you some tips on rubrics and assessment development. Then, as you know, that assessment is done to improve the program. So we'll look into how we should put a continuous improvement plan together. So with that the outline of the workshop, my background related to ABET or accreditation is that I have been a program evaluator since 1999. I joined accreditation group in 1996. I start having my assignment in 1999 as a program evaluator. Typically, as a program evaluator, we go to the universities, and initially we start with domestic universities. Once you have enough experience, then they can start sending you overseas international visits in there. As part of that, American Society of Mechanical Engineers, I served on their Committee of Engineering Accreditation since 2013 to 2018. And in 2014, they sent me to the to the commission, what we call Engineering Accreditation Council of ABET, EAC, short form is EAC, which is dealing with only engineering areas. There are different commissions, but this is the one which is EAC, is the one for engineering programs. There I serve as a team chair and I serve as a program evaluator, continue to do that. Even today, I'm taking the team out to international countries, even though I have finished my term as a commissioner. During this time, I have more than 50 visits as a team chair or program evaluator. Also last year, I became ABET Bridge Advisor. And what that means is that if any university need any help about ABET, when they contact ABET itself, then they will nominate my name to the university and say that Mahesh Agrawal can help you out in this particular case. They have a number of bridge advisors. So based on whatever the needs are, they will select based on that particular case. So let's talk about introduction. Basically that assessment is something which we feel that it should not be a burden on faculty, nor should it consume a lot of time. So the problem I have seen in the past is that data is over-assessed. The programs collecting too much data, and they many times don't know what to do with all the data. And even if they know what to do with the data, the process might not be sustainable because it's consuming a lot of time from the faculty, and faculty always complained that we don't have that much time. So the way I will present this workshop will be in a way that it will reduce the time spent on assessment. You get the meaningful assessment. Faculty will feel very comfortable. It will cut down the time for each faculty. They don't really have to spend too much time. And in the process, then they can develop their own techniques for the assessment. The one we present here are simply guidelines. And it will be important for us to see how everyone look into those and try to adapt those things differently in there. And of course, the workshop will not be complete unless we provide some examples. Typically in a workshop, we always ask participants to develop their own examples, assessment performance indicators and all those kind of things. Having a large group, it's not going to be possible to have breakout rooms. So I will provide examples in all different areas and see exactly how they will be serving the assessment process. You can get some idea from those. You can set up your own way, and everyone has their own way to do it. So one of the things we like to do before we start actual assessment process there, to look into some of the key definitions what we have from ABET. These definitions are directly taken from their website or the document what they call criteria documents there ABET has. Every year they revise the document, but the definitions stay same. So ABET always talks about student outcomes. People look into different ways and they talk about program outcomes, they talk about learning outcomes. They all basically mean the same thing. And ABET just decided to call them student outcomes. What does student outcomes mean? So basically, student outcomes describe what students are expected to know and be able to do by the time of graduation. So when a student graduates from a program, what are their skills? What knowledge they have? What behavior they have acquired during this time when they progress through the program? What are able to do? Are these engineers are ready to go on jobs and take very first day and start working on the job without any problems? So every university wants to make sure when the students graduate from their program that they have enough knowledge, enough skills, and they develop a lot of knowledge during the process. What we call the traits, student traits and qualities and skills and those kind of things. And those are the ones they have obtained, which will make them marketable in the job market. So that is what student outcome means. So just keep in mind, and we will differentiate this again with something else. These are the skills when students have at the time of graduation. When they graduate, this is what we expect them to know. The second part of that comes in there is the assessment part, the definition of assessment. So assessment is one or more processes that identify, collect, and prepare data to evaluate the attainment of student outcomes. So in order to see if student outcomes are being achieved, we do the assessment. We collect the data. And before actually we even collect, we have to identify what are we looking to collect? What do you want to collect from the students? And that is why I'm saying that many of the universities collect the data without setting a particular plan, without knowing exactly what data really they need. They collect data from every class. There is no need to do that. You don't need to collect the data from every class. Some data from few samples will indicate whether there is any issue or not. And that's why it is important for us to decide, plan for the data collection, because we need to know exactly what are we going to collect and how we're going to use this data. So when you look into the effective assessment, we have a number of different ways that you can assess, you can collect the data. You can use direct method. You can use indirect method. You can use quantitative measures, qualitative measures. Whatever you think is appropriate for the program, that's the method we use. But keep in mind that we never rely only on one method of collection data, not one method of assessment. Typically, we like to see that you collect directly, and we'll show the example and see exactly what kind of artifacts we can use for collecting data directly. But then you also want to collect some data indirectly, whether it's through the course survey, whether it's through the student interview, the end of the course, things like that. And we'll show you the difference between the direct and indirect assessment part in there and see what these methods comes in there. So whatever method you use, make sure that you don't use only just one method. So now we are assessing the data. That means we are going to collect the data and going to prepare to evaluate. So what is evaluate means? Evaluation is one or more processes for interpreting the data. So you want to see what this data means and the evidence accumulated through assessment processes. So you want to look into all those kind of things and what does the data means? What does the assessment process means, Or what are the evidence? All those things are used in the evaluation process. So then evaluation will determine the extent to which the student outcomes are being attained. Evaluation results in decision and action regarding program improvement. That's how you want to improve the program, is by using your evaluation results. One thing to keep in mind is that there's nowhere, nobody will ever tell you that you must attain all the outcomes. If you attain all the outcomes, what is to improve? So the idea is, don't feel bad if you do not attain the outcomes. You might not attain any of the outcomes during the first trial. And then you go back and say, okay, so what can I do to improve? So next time I do a better job on the attainment of outcomes. And that is what the continuous improvement process is all about. Because if you don't, if you meet the requirement the first time, there's no incentive for you to improve unless you change your data and say, this is what we're going to do in there. There's one of the other thing here, which I didn't include in there was, because we are talking about the student outcome, was the program educational objectives. Those are the traits or the qualities or the knowledge students have few years after graduation. So that is also part of the process here. So let's talk about the student learning outcomes. As more commonly it's known that we have learning outcomes. These are so the guidelines you can follow, and but you can come up with your own method. Emphasis is that everyone should be able to come up with their own method. So if you decide to have students learning outcomes, and whether they are from program outcomes or whatever way you did, mapping is very important, because ABET is looking for student outcomes. There's a set of 7 student outcomes, which we'll talk in the next slide there. So you might have 12, 13, 14 learning outcomes or program outcomes. We want to make sure that those program outcomes are mapped to the student outcomes, because you're going to be assessing and evaluating those program outcomes or student learning outcomes. Once you assess those and you attain those outcomes, then if you have mapped those outcomes to student outcomes, then automatically it means that you are also attaining the student outcomes, ABET student outcomes. That is why it's very important there. We have to always look into the satisfying criteria. How do we know that students' learning outcomes are attained? So we need to look into the process there. And one of the process which is not correct, and we'll talk about that later on, is averaging all the data together for a particular outcome. When you average the data for a particular outcome, it is hard to decide what is missing in there, what things students don't understand. So you really cannot take the continuous improvement action plan for that. So the idea, again, keep in mind that the whole process of assessing and evaluating is to continuously improve your program. That the whole ultimate goal of every accreditation body in the world today, the reason they assess and evaluate the program is to want to make sure that you know how to continuously improve the quality of your program. It all goes about the quality of the program. Now, ABET has been using the outcome-based assessment since 1999. That was the first time they introduced those. Before that, they did not have the outcome-based assessment. It was a new concept in 2000 when they introduced those. And every 20 years or so, of course, they look into their outcomes and try to see if they're still valid or not valid. And again, that's their continuous improvement process. They want to make sure that the outcome they established in 1999 or 2000 are still valid today. If not, what can we do to improve the assessment and improve the quality of the program? So what they have done is in 2019-2020 cycle, they come up with a new SOs, new student outcomes. And these outcomes are basically 7 outcomes altogether. And I will go through each of them here, but the things which you need to consider, whether you are mapping these outcomes to student learning outcomes or program outcomes, it is very important that we include all the elements of these outcomes in order to satisfy ABET outcomes. So for example, consider SO1, student outcome 1. It says ability to identify, formulate, and solve complex engineering problems. So the question comes in, if you assess your student outcome 1 in the first year course or second year course, a student might not be exposed to the complex problem by that time. You might not be assessing complex engineering problems. So you are not satisfying, you are not really using the student outcome, which is what ABET has indicated. So that means you need to go into the high level courses, third year and fourth year courses. And that's where you need to, students are exposed to complex problems, and that's where you need to assess your outcome number 1. Also, please remember that if you have large class, it is okay to take a sample of the students. A random sample. You don't want to go alphabetically, say I'm going to take from A to C, and pick up 20 students for assessment. You pick a assessment, take the class, which is a sample, randomly select the 20 students from the class of 80 or class of 100. And that is perfectly all right. When you select randomly, it is an indication of an entire class, representative of the entire class. Look at many of the times they miss outcome 2. Outcome 2 says ability to apply engineering design to produce solutions that meet specified needs with considerations of public health, safety, and welfare, as well as global, cultural, social, and environmental and economic factors. So over the years, what I have seen is that students are able to produce a design, and they actually make a prototype and things like those, but they never consider what is the economics of this project, how feasible economically this one is. Does it have any environmental impact in there? Does it play any role in the society? Does it have any global impact? Maybe you are introducing your own small product and it has no significance for international world in there. So what ABET says is that even though these are all the factors which we consider in there, but the important part is that you need to, they might not apply all of them to your design problem. But what ABET is looking is for you to decide that have you looked into the possibility what the effect will be on public health, what the effect will be on the safety, welfare, all these factors. So even if you have not looked into these factors, and they don't apply to your project, they don't apply to your design problem, you want to make sure that you indicate and tell that, yes, I check all these factors there, and economic factors applies to my solution, environmental impact has something in there, but many of the other parts are not needed in my project. They don't have any bearing on the rest of the things. So ABET wants to see that, yes, you have been exposed to those things, you consider those in your design, because that's what you're supposed to look into that. Then same thing, look into the ability to communicate effectively with a range of audience. When it talks about range of audiences and talk about communication, of course, communication could be verbal, communication could be in writing. So when you are having a communication through writing, then are you presenting that only to your classmates, your colleagues, or this is available for everyone to look into that? So whenever a student publish a paper with the faculty, things like that, of course, then they are reaching out to a different range, a wide range of audiences. So the question comes is that, okay, students do not do much of the publications. So how do we satisfy this for ABET in our students, undergraduate students? So the idea is, it does not say communicate has to be only in writing or in orally. Typically, you look into and you say, okay, I'm going to write the reports, I'm submitting the term paper, I'm writing the lab reports, I'm effectively communicating in writing. But this is only limited to my own teacher. Nobody else is going to see this thing there. So really, you don't have a range of audiences in there. But look into this way. If you have a presentation in the class for your senior design project, let's say, or any of the design projects, and all the students are there, that is one audience. Then you invited all the faculty, that's a second audience there. There might be people coming from administration, your dean might be there, and some other people might be coming. That's your third audience. There might be people from industry, because many of the projects are sponsored by industries. So industry, you invite the member from the industry to come and say, hey, let's listen to what your student has done on the project you sponsored. So now you got 3-4 different ranges of the audience, which is what ABET is looking for in there. Now consider assessment, a student outcome number 4, an ability to recognize ethical and professional responsibilities in engineering situations and make informed judgments, which must consider the impact of engineering solutions in global, economic, environmental, and societal context. So for example, when you are making the judgment, you need to consider the impact of the solution of this problem you are doing. Does it have any impact globally? Does it have any impact economically, environmentally, societally? Because many times you look into and say somebody is designing a bridge or designing a structure. What happens if the structure falls down? What kind of impact is going to have? Of course, it has economic impact. It will have environmental impact. It will have societal impact in there. Could it have global impact? Sure, it could have global impact, because nowadays, everything all connected globally. The material you got from this was imported from somewhere else. Now you have to get new material from the same place. So it has that impact. So that is what they're talking about. Say, make sure that you consider the impact of these solutions on different areas there. Look at number 5, an ability to function effectively in a team whose members together provide leadership, create a collaborative and inclusive environment, establish goals, plan tasks, and meet objectives. When you are doing a senior design project, of course, this is the ideal place for that to assess in there. Each team, you are assigning a team, each team has to work collaboratively. Everyone should be talking in the team. You should not, no one should be left out. That's an inclusive environment. Include everyone in there. You need someone to take the leadership role in that, because that's the only way project will get done. If somebody in charge of the project, that's what we call leader in this particular case. But then the thing which ABET is looking is to make sure that you very clearly indicate what are the goals for this project. What are the different tasks we're going to plan in this project, and what their timeline will be. Are we meeting the objectives or not? All those kind of things are the one which we have to look into that. So when you talk about a senior design project and you say, I'm going to assess number 5 in there, you want to make sure that you assess in a way that everyone is able to contribute in there. That's the idea. You not want to make sure all the elements are included. Many times we see planned task is omitted in this particular case. Leadership is omitted. We want to make sure that everything is included in this particular case in there. Now, talk about number 6, an ability to develop and conduct appropriate experimentation, analyze and interpret data, and use engineering judgment to draw conclusions. So the important thing here is that this thing typically is assessed in a laboratory course where the students are going to develop or conduct the experiment. They're going to collect the data, then they're going to analyze and interpret the data. But then when they draw the conclusions, many times they simply say, this is what we got the value of viscosity or something like that kind of thing from this experiment. But then we are asking to use the engineering judgment. The value might be too high or maybe out of range, things like those. Use your judgment. Where do you use how do you get the judgment of that? Well, literature provide you the values of these things, what you expect the value should be. But your value is different. Then you need to think about is, what can I do to improve? What could have gone wrong in this particular case? Is it possible that my data collection process was at fault, that I did not get the right data, or some instrument was not working? So those are the kind of things you have to think about when you're writing the conclusion. What are your conclusion based on? Are these values good? Are you getting good results from your experiment, or you're getting very poor results? That kind of thing is what we talk about in there. And the last one there is a ability to acquire and apply new knowledge as needed using appropriate learning strategies. This used to be something similar to what we call lifelong learning. So we want to make sure that students are able to acquire the new knowledge when needed, because when these students go to on job, everything is not what they have learned in the classroom. On the job, you have to find some other information. You might have to look at the information. Are these students able to go and find and look where the information is available in there? And then apply that new knowledge they learned and got there in your project or your design problem, things like that. And any learning strategies they can use. I mean, it's appropriate, whatever it is, whether it's going to be through the internet or through reading the technical papers or whatever, or talking to some colleagues, or talking to your professor and things like that in there. So the idea is that you need to be ready. You need to be apply the new knowledge and acquire this new knowledge there and apply it. And typically this thing is done by having maybe a paper assigned to the students in a class, which could be a very different topic, current topic, could be current topic. We could assign a paper to the students, hey, write us on the electric vehicles or the batteries, used in the electric vehicles and things like that. Now, these students are forced to go to the library or look into the internet and find all the information they can find. And based on that, when they present the paper to you, then you say, oh, yeah, they were able to acquire the new knowledge, they were able to apply the new knowledge and use the appropriate learning strategies to collect all that and submit to us. At this point, since this is the part of the student outcomes, 7 of them, I would like to open up for any question answers before we move on. Let's take a break for the question answers there. Nagma, you can see if anybody has any questions, and then I will be able to answer those questions.
Sir, till we didn't get any questions from the audience, sir.
Well, let's ask them if anybody has any question. Please post them, give them a
yes,
30,
I have
30
posted
seconds.
the message in the chat box. Still, I'm
Okay.
not getting any questions.
Okay. Then we'll move on to the next slide then, okay?
Yes,
but
sir, please.
anytime you find any question, anything, you
Yes,
please
sir.
let me know and
Yes.
we'll stop at that point, okay?
Sure, sir. Sure, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
So once we are done with the deciding what the outcomes are, whether they are ABET outcomes or program outcomes or whatever we decide we have, the next step, of course, comes to the assessment process. The idea of assessment is if we use the rubrics in there with the performance indicator, that makes the things to be so easy in there. So think about this, that we have a topic. Let's say go back to the previous slide here. And let's, for example, take number one, outcome number one. Identify what are the different things you can assess when students submit a problem, whether it's an exam problem or anything like that. And you look into and saying there, are they able to correctly identify and formulate the problem? Are they able to identify the math and physics behind it? What kind of physical laws are applicable? Are they able to solve this problem? Are they able to reach the conclusion after solving the problem? So you can look into any of these outcomes or any of the student learning outcomes and try to divide each of the outcomes in a measurable part in there. Don't try to look into combining too many things together, because then you don't know what you are assessing. So we say, identify the problem. That's very simple. If they identify the problem correctly or not correctly. Are they able to formulate? That means they are applying the physics laws, correct physics laws, mathematical equations, and all those kind of things. Are they able to solve the problem correctly? Are they able to make a conclusion out of that? So typically you look into this one there and say, I can, yeah, those are easy for me to assess because it's very distinct, very clearly. I can look into the paper and find out if the students have the correct equations, correct physical laws. That's one part of that thing. And that is what we call those to be the performance indicators. So basically what we say is that take each outcome and divide
Professor,
into,
let's
yes,
have the questionnaire session. One question
okay.
is, what is the assessment for the students to get good knowledge? For they are from the different stream, that's okay. What are the assessments they have to follow to get the good knowledge?
Well, okay. So basically, the assessment is for us to see if they have the good knowledge or not good knowledge. And that's what we are talking about. So now we are going to look into the different assessment, and that's what we are talking about. And this will indicate to us. So for example, I just give an example of SO1, where I say we're going to assess if students are able to identify the problem. If students are able to apply the correct physical laws to that problem, mathematical equations, correct equations, are students able to solve the problem correctly? Are able to students reach the conclusion based on that solution they have? So once you look into and say, oh, I have the 70 or 80% of the students, they can identify the problem, they apply the correct physical laws, and they are able to solve most of the time. They are able to solve the problem correctly in there. That means we understand that those students have achieved the knowledge of that particular area. That's how you look into how the assessment will indicate the knowledge achieved by the students in there. So these different categories, different elements we talk about, this is what we consider, we call them performance indicator. They are indicating to us their performance. Excuse me, in each of the subject areas. So performance indicators are defined as specific measurable statements identifying student performance required to meet the outcomes. And then it is confirmable through evidence. So the evidence in this case, what we say is that you have a student, every student submitted a problem. Maybe it's exam problem number 2, one problem in the exam you can identify for this purpose. And you look into that problem, and that problem is graded based on these kind of measures there in terms of indicators. And indicators are different components of that particular outcome. Now I'm going to show you the example and see how the rubric is going to play the role in this particular case. So once we look into these indicators and we understand the indicators are satisfied, that means our outcome is satisfied. But look at example. If you, let's say, you're looking the performance indicator, 4 of them, and 2 performance indicators, large number of students did very poor on that. Let's say they got only 40% out of 40% marks in this case. So you can use that one as a criteria part in there, saying, we will show the example later on, but like if we say 0 to 20, if they got 0 to 20 points, that means they don't understand anything. They cannot formulate the problem. They cannot, identify the problem. They cannot solve it. Nothing is done right. That's why they're getting 0 to 20. And 20-40, similarly, 20 to 40 might be that they're getting one part of it. Maybe they are able to identify the problem correctly. But still applying the physical laws, some of them correct, some of them incorrect, and those kind of things. Then, that could go maybe up to 40, 50% or something like that. Then you look into the range of the students from 50% to 70 or 80% and say these students are able to identify the problem, solve the problem, and they apply that correctly, formulate the problem correctly. And they got the conclusion right, they got the answer correct, but they did not explain about the answer there, whether that answer is right, wrong, or what. They did not explain that part in there. And the remaining students, 20% of the students from 80 to 100 who got 80 to 100, you say those are able to do this. So there is a large number of student population which receive a score less than 40 or 50%. But then there's a good amount of students, good population of students who receive 100%. So when you average all those things there, you might find that average is 70%, 75%. So you say my criteria to satisfy outcome was 70% of the student score, 75% or higher, something like that. And yes, I have all the students, 100% of the student, average is 75%. Now you fail to identify where the problem is. These 50% students who got very poor marks in there, between 20 to 40%, or 0 to 40%, you fail to identify those students. Why are not they able to identify or formulate the problem? So averaging always masks the weakest parts. That is why we always say, don't use the average. So when you look into that's why we say the continuous improvement process, where we want to improve the program, that's why the performance indicator plays such an important role in there, because they can mask the weakest part for the student if you use the average. So you want to make sure that you don't use the average. Look each indicator. And if you say only 60% of the students were able to identify the problem correctly, there's some problem there. If you say only 30% of the students were able to solve the problem correctly, there's some issues there. And idea is we want to make sure that everyone is able to do these problems correctly. Majority of the students are able to do correctly and those kind of things. And that's why it is important for us not to average performance indicators. So different type of assessment methods. I mentioned briefly before about direct assessment and indirect assessment. Direct assessment provides the direct observation of the student knowledge or skills against measurable outcome. So for example, you ask a student to solve a problem in the exam and students solve the problem. You can measure that. Students solve it correctly or not solve it correctly. You know exactly how much they did, what kind of skill they acquired to get that in there. So if every student is solving the problem correctly in there, you say, oh, they have the knowledge available or required to solve this problem. And that is a direct observation. We are directly observing that through their work in there. So some of the example of the direct assessment methods include, for example, will be course assignment. You assign all these course assignment problems there, homework problem, and you say, we are going to identify this problem for your assessment. Same thing you do in the written or oral exam. You don't have to pick the whole exam to assess the outcome there. You say, I'm going to look into this particular problem. That's a good complex problem. A student required to use all different knowledge they have acquired. And that is why I'm going to consider only that problem in that exam to be the assessment. Then you look into your projects, term papers or papers, portfolios, standardized test. Same thing as your test, exams, same thing with the standardized test, because students go and take the standardized test and their performance in there directly shows you how much they have gained the knowledge in this particular case. Or performance appraisal, directly observe behavior of the student, and they will the manager says, this is how the performance is. They look at the performance appraisal of this particular student working in our company, and this student has done an excellent job, be on time, solve all the problem, submit the project on time, all different kind of attributes. And that is then what we consider is you can look into that as a direct assessment method, because that's a direct observed behavior in there. But like we always say, don't rely everything on one particular method, direct assessment method. We're going to look into indirect method because you want to have more than one method to use. Indirect assessment method. Indirect assessment method that provides opinion or self-reporting of the student knowledge. A student tell you and come to you and you interview the student for something, and student say, oh yeah, I understand this, I understand this. That is student opinion only. If you give an exam to the student saying, okay, you understand this, okay, I'm going to give you a problem, please solve it. If a student is able to solve, you got direct and indirect assessment consistent for that student. If a student feels that, oh yeah, I can solve this problem, but does not solve the problem correctly, then it's a perception only of the student opinion that they can do it. So that is considered indirect method. And indirect method, you consider focus group, same way, written surveys and questionnaire, senior exit, other interviews. Those are all opinions for someone. Students say, yeah, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. That's their opinion. That is why we say use both a direct and indirect method. So you got their opinion. Now, let's see what they do in the class. Let's say what they do solving the problem. That is the direct assessment. And that's why it becomes important. Now, in order to do the assessment of these, whether it's a direct assessment, indirect assessment, we use number of rating scales. And by the way, this is just an example of the rating scale. You can come up with your own rating scales, whatever best works for you. Never look into and see the rating scale, what should we use this one or not? No, you don't have to use this one. You can come up with your own method. And I will show you one example where you'll see that you can come up with our own method there. So rating scales, first number one rating scale, we talk about either 1 through 4 or a scale of 4 or a scale of 5. If you consider a scale of 5, we could have strongly agree, strongly disagree, neutral, agree, strongly agree. Those are the 5 different things in there. Now, you say rating scales, is it good only for the indirect assessment? As a matter of fact, no. Indirect assessment rarely use these kind of rating scales. But direct assessment is what you need to think about is, so strongly disagree, neutral, agree, strongly agree. You can classify each of them from 1 to 5 based on the points they get on the particular problem you are using to assess their knowledge. That's where you assign. You say, well, in my opinion, or the student able to solve the problem, well, no, it's a strongly disagree. They did not solve the problem correctly. Or did part of the problem correctly, not very strongly, but part of the problem correctly. Well, it says some correct, some incorrect, and that kind of thing. Mostly correctly, and strongly agree means everything correct with no errors and including some extra information, justification, and those kind of things. So you can use this kind of scale there. Or you can use the scale, but 1 to 4 will be like beginning, developing, accomplished, exemplary. So you say, this student, yeah, he started understanding a little bit. He still have a lot of problem. So it's in the beginning stage. Now understand more in there, the developing stage. Accomplished means now they understand everything, how to do it. Exemplary means it will do on a higher scale, better way. It will do that problem. Or the problem is solved, that put the justification of why this answer is correct, what could have gone wrong, and those kind of things in there. So you can decide your own scale. These are not the ones you consider. You can have your own scale every way, whichever way you want, either on a scale 1 to 4 or 1 to 5. And that's what you look into this particular case. The other is called, other scales we use many times is dichotomous scale, where students are able to answer yes, no, true, false, right, wrong, present, absent, and those kind of combination. Typically, this thing is good for survey questions sometimes. Again, it can be yes and no, or it can be also strongly agree, disagree, and that kind of things in the survey question. And we look into that a little bit more in detail in there. Then we could have semantic differential scales, checklist with yes, no answers, or a sliding bar scale. It could be continuous sliding bar, that kind of thing. Also, we have qualitative based on recurring patterns and themes to analyze narrative observations. Most of the time we use those methods in the survey or focus group is what we use that one there. So let's next go to see how we develop the indicators. As I mentioned before, that you basically indicators are nothing but dividing your entire outcome into different components. So that's what we're going to emphasize here. It says, first of all, of course, you need to identify the course. What course I'm going to use for assessment. I don't believe that you want to assess every single course. You identify where you're going to assess what outcome. And not only that, sometimes what you'll find is that a rubric, you might use the part of the rubric, 3 components of the rubric in one course. One component of the rubric might be appropriate for a different course. That can be done too. There's nothing wrong with that in there. Then we say, what are we going to use as artifacts? Are we going to grade them on their homework assignments? Or are we going to look into the exam problem? Or are we going to talk about projects and papers and things like those? Then the next task comes in. Okay, so now let's try to see what performance indicator we are going to have for each of those outcomes there. Keep in mind, the indicator should be short and measurable. You can measure those very easily without getting confused with the other elements of that outcome in there. So we establish the performance indicators. Then we develop the rubric for each of these performance indicators. And we can use any scale we want to use. Make sure these are the tips on the rubrics and assessment development. Make sure all elements of the outcome are covered in performance indicator. Otherwise, you will feel you will have shortcomings in there. We say, I cannot emphasize enough never average all indicators to check if outcome is satisfied. Each indicator satisfied means outcome is satisfied. Even if one indicator is not satisfied, outcome is not satisfied, and you need an action plan to improve that area. Because if you do the average, you will not be able to see specific weakness in certain areas for the student. I remember one time I was teaching a MATLAB course in there, and that time we didn't have to assess the complex problem, so I used that one to assess that kind of similar outcome that time. And I found that one of my rubric is to understanding with the students about the not only the functions which are built-in functions, but functions created by the students. And the students fail miserably in that performance indicator about the importance of self-developing functions there. So then my action plan was that I will go ahead and try to introduce user-defined function right in the beginning of the course without even telling them that these are functions. When the time comes, then we'll mention that these are the functions, but emphasize that kind of thing. Next time I assess, there was no problem. So that kind of thing, you need to find the areas which can be improved in there. And we say, do not use course grade. Again, course grade is the aggregate value, and it doesn't tell you much about the outcome, satisfied or not satisfied. Again, it will mask all the issues which we have. A student getting even a C, your range might be that C start from 40% or 50% to 70% in that range. So it doesn't tell you much when you average all these scores and that kind of thing in there. Another thing to keep in mind, I mentioned that before, that you don't need to assess all the performance indicator in the same course. The outcome has 4 indicators. You assess 3 in one course, you assess 1 in a different course. Perfectly all right. Idea is we want to see if students have gained the knowledge in those indicators or not. Where you may assess them is material there. Then you need to decide how often the assessment for each outcome is performed. Like I said, I have seen many places where every year they are performing outcomes assessment. Every course they are performing outcome assessment. That's too much data to collect every year. No wonder faculty complain that it takes a lot of time and they don't want to do the assessment. So adopt some cycle, 2-year cycle or a 3-year cycle. If your outcomes in the beginning are having problem to be satisfied, to be attained, put a 2-year cycle. Okay, I'm going to assess outcome number 1 now in 2 courses. And if I have problem, then I'm going to assess this in another year later, in 2nd year. 2 years later, I'm going to assess this again and see if I made the improvement or not made the improvement with the action plan I put together for that. So that is the kind of thing which you are looking in there. Then if it is a 3-year cycle, which most of the time you find your outcomes are satisfied, then you say, oh, I don't need to do it every 2 years. I will do it in 3 years in there. So a 6-year cycle, you collect only 2 sets of data. Nothing wrong with that. That's perfectly fine. Because this is what's going to be having either half of the outcomes to be assessed in a 2-year cycle in each year, or 1/3 of the outcome to be assessed in a 3-year cycle, will reduce the time, faculty time drastically in there. We'll take one more slide and then I will take a break and see exactly what we have in there. So it says when using indirect assessments such as surveys, questionnaire, focus groups, it is best to ask all participants to use either rating scale or dichotomous scale for answering these SOS. So typically what people have done is when they take the senior student surveys and ask them the question, they write all these outcomes and they say, do you feel that you achieve this outcome? And a student could say either yes, no, if you want yes, no answer, or it is better probably to say strongly disagree, or a neutral, or agree, or strongly agree. That will indicate exactly what we have in this particular case. So that is why it is important for us to decide exactly what kind of rating scale we want to use and how we want to use this one there. So that is, with that one there, it's 8:05. We are almost into second hour now. Let's, Nagma, let's take a quickly a break here and see what question we might have. And I'm also
Hello, sir. Still, we didn't get any questions from the participants.
well, let's pause it and take a 1 minute break, and I will drink some water, and let's see if anybody has any question in the meantime.
Okay, sir. Fine, sir. Please, sir.
When you talk constantly, you need some water. I didn't realize that before. So
Yes, sir. Of course, sir.
okay. Okay, no question still? Chat says one question in the chat. Do you have any? Let's see what question it says. What is the assessment for students to, well, we already answered that question before. Okay. Okay, we'll continue, okay? We'll continue there.
Okay, sir.
So next we're going to look into some direct assessment of these outcomes. We'll go through a couple of them in great details, and then rest of them we will show you the performance indicators for them. So next one we have is, okay. Oh, okay. So student outcome number one. Remember, we talk about this and we say ability to identify, formulate, and solve complex engineering problems by applying principles of engineering, science, and mathematics. So science and mathematics all coming in there. These are the principles of engineering being applied. So let's look into and see what we can define as performance indicator. And I put it into 3 indicators in this particular case. Define the complex engineering problems and identify the characteristics, variables, criteria, constraint necessary to propose the solution for this problem. So I combine identify and formulate, identify and define the problem into one group there. The second group has to do with formulation. And of course, the formulation means now you're using applicable mathematical and physical laws, because that's what the problem is asking there. You could also say engineering laws in there. But engineering laws are basically based on physics. So mathematical and physical laws required to solve the problem. Formulate those. And the third one is solve the complex problem and present conclusion based on analysis and interpretations there. So that is, as you can see, in this particular outcome, each indicator has taken care of certain elements of the outcome. Altogether, all 3 indicators have included identification, formulation, solving, and applying principles of science and math in there, basically. So that is how you divide your outcome into a performance indicators. This is what it is, and we need to make sure that we use all of them. So I'm going to show you an example here based on a scale of 1 to 4, where 1 will be considered that a student is just beginning to learn, does not define the complex problem correctly, nor identify the characteristics, variables, which are variables, criteria, constraint necessary to propose an appropriate solution. So this student is basically lost somewhere. Didn't understand anything in there. The second category will be that the student is developing. That means that he can define the complex problem correctly, but does not identify the characteristics. What are we need? What are the variables? What are the criteria? What are the constraints we have in this particular case? The student is not able to identify those in there. Then we have the student who say define the complex problem correctly identify the characteristics, and propose an appropriate solutions, but without justifying his or her approach. Got the shortcut, miss some certain things, and say, okay, here's my solution, and that's it. Then the exemplary will be, student does everything as required, justify his or her approach, and tell us exactly the correct solution and all that kind of thing. So this is based on a scale of 1 to 4. And like we said, that similar kind of rubrics can be developed for every indicator in every outcome. And this is for this particular, these are the indicators, not the rubric yet. These are the indicators. So the first thing we say is you need to develop the indicators. And we say we can develop the indicators. And in this case, we got 3 indicators. And we're going to consider all of these 3 indicators based on the rubric, which will include 4 components in there. Beginner, beginner, and then it will be developing, accomplished, and exemplary. Now let's look into the rubric, what the rubric will look like in there. So you can see the line 1, the column 1 shows the performance indicators as we talk about. Those performance indicators there. Then what do we want to see in the beginning? So does not define the problem, does not formulate the problem, does not solve the problem, doesn't do anything. That's the beginning part. Developing means it does certain things and does not do other things in there. So it defines the problem correctly, but it does not identify the characteristics in there. Formulate the problem, but does not apply the methods and physical and mathematical methods correctly. Solve the problem, but does not present conclusions. Then the accomplished for each of them will be define the complex problem correctly identify the characteristics, and propose the solution without justifying his or her approach. There are a number of different ways a problem can be solved. So we are saying that it did not tell us what approach is picked and why did it pick that approach in there. While the exemplary in that case will be showing that, yes, I have all the necessary approach in there. This is why I did this thing and that kind of thing. So this is how the rubric is created. Once you have this rubric, then it becomes simple matter of taking a problem, whether it's a exam problems or the assignment problems, and grade that problem according to this. And if I consider beginning to be 1, developing to be 2, accomplished to be 3, and exemplary to be 4, then that's what I'm going to show in there. I will grade each of these student term paper or exam papers, exam question or the assignment problem according to 1, 2, 3, 4, based on how much they understand here. And that is how we're going to be doing the rubric. Now, same outcome, let's consider that indirect assessment in there. So I look into different ways in this particular case, and we say we are asking students to fill out the survey at the end of the course. So that's the kind of thing we are looking, and we did this one in advanced heat transfer or advanced thermodynamics. And we asked the question at the end of the exam from the student after the semester was done, toward the end of the semester, how effective has this been in achieving SO1? How would you like to rate your overall learning experience in this course as relate to SO1? How would you rate the overall quality of this course as related to SO1? How effective were the homework assignments in achieving SO1? How effective were the exams and quizzes in achieving SO1? Now you notice that in this survey, I got 5 different answers in there, 5 different categories for the student. 5 indicators versus the 3 indicators I have in the direct assessment. And that's perfectly fine because we are not going to mix match 2 of them. It's immaterial how many we have in one versus other. So then this class actually I had consisted of 15 students. And I said my satisfaction criteria is going to be that 80% students score 3 or higher on each PC. So we got 5 PC, and we consider them based on a scale of 1 to 5. And then we try to find out exactly 80% of the students satisfied each PC or not. Here's the data I presented in there.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
We have one question from the participant.
Okay.
Good day, Professor Mahesh. What is the effective assessment for summative test?
Okay, so same thing. Remember, it's a whether it's a summative evaluation or not, you need to make sure that you consider each PC in there. Performance criteria or performance indicator, what we talk about performance indicators in there, that's what we need to do. We need to consider those separately in there for each of the summative evaluation also. So it doesn't matter what kind of evaluation you're doing. So in this particular course, I'm calling performance criteria instead of performance indicator, which we invariably use one or other, without any problem there. As you can see, when I plotted the data, and I will show you the, yes, I will show you the detail of this in a minute here. I will look into other example also. But this one shows that on PC5, most of the students says, yeah, we have the good understanding. It proposed a solution or whatever we had. Let's go back to the previous page here. Remember these questions we were asking, either you can ask this question in the effective way, how effective, you can use a scale of 1 to 5, or you can ask this question yes or no. How effective was course homework assignment? Instead of saying how effective, you will change the question to be saying that was it effective? Yes or no. How effective means you can say, hey, do you agree? Or how effective the homework assignment was? And the student says it was very effective, less effective, not effective. So now you can change the categories in there. You don't have to follow exactly the same one, whether agree, strongly agree, disagree, those kind of things. In this case, we are talking about effective in there. How rate the overall quality, rating there. Good, not very good, poor, bad, very bad. So all different kind of things you can do. And it doesn't matter. Each of them, you can use a different way in there, as long as the scale is 1 to 5 in this particular case. So when we did this, you can see most of the students scored 3 or better. As a matter of fact, almost 90% of students scored 3 or better. There were like 2 or 3 students which did not do that on PC1. So PC1 is the one you look into. I think there are 2 students out of 15, which means that 2 out of 15 will be about 12, 15, 13%. So we are still okay with 80%. But suppose that was 3 out of 15 students. That's 20%, right on the margin. 4 out of 15. We missed that, then that means we did not satisfy their criteria. So that's how you look into that. It is important to consider how we are doing this thing. So here is a survey we did to the senior exit class one time. And we ask them the question according to each outcome. As you can see, I move around outcome 6A. So outcome 6 was divided into two parts. Outcome 5 was divided into two parts. Outcome 1 was overall, asked them. I similarly outcome 2, 3, 4, and 7. So we ask this question, and we say, question was phrased in a way that they can answer either excellent, good, okay, not good, or poor. And this is how we did this particular survey. And now you can look into each outcome, you can plot separately to see exactly if there's any issues or not any issues. So for example, when you look into outcome 1, how well has your undergraduate education training prepared you to identify, formulate, and solve complex engineering problems? This is exactly the similar kind of thing we have the outcome 1 in there. And this particular case, you can see 42.9% students say that it was excellent preparation. 28.6% say that it was good. So now if you look into scale 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4 and 5, consisting of about 70% of the students said good or excellent. 21% said okay. If my criteria was 4 or higher, 80% student, I did not meet this criteria here, and then I need to think about the action, what I'm going to do. But if I consider 3 to 5, means that they say, yeah, okay, I prepared, I got enough understanding, I got enough training here. Then, as you can see, it went more than 90% in this particular case. So that's how we look into the survey questions and try to figure out exactly how it can match what we are interested in knowing. When we divide 6 into two parts in A and B, so develop and conduct experiment, because that's one of the things students are doing constantly, or analyze and interpret data and draw conclusion. So you can do either one, or you can do, if you want to understand more, then divide into more categories. I could have divided into 3 categories. Second one, I say analyze and interpret their data. Third one, I say conclusion based on engineering judgment. So that's how you do these surveys. This is very similar to what you're doing in the test for the direct assessment. Let's look into one more example in detail here, okay? As of 4, because this was a little bit more involved in there, and we found that a lot of time they are missing the information on this particular case. Ability to recognize ethical and professional responsibilities in engineering situations and make informed judgments, which must consider the impact of engineering solutions in global, economic, environmental, and societal context. And this, we are doing the direct assessment of that. So that means that you have either you're teaching a course on professional responsibilities, ethical responsibilities, or you have a few lectures on that in a semester, and then you introduce them all the different things in there. So recognize and apply the appropriate code of ethics. Of course, when you're teaching a ethical course, then they need to understand what the code of ethics means. What are those code of ethics? So in the problem, you say indicator 1 will be, yeah, they are able to recognize the correct code of ethics here and apply that in there. Whether they apply correctly, incorrectly, that kind of thing, that's part of rubric. But that's what we're going to check. If they're able to recognize what code of ethics applicable to this particular problem in there. That is a key in there. Second one is recognize the professional responsibilities associated with engineering solutions, situations at hand. Look into the problem and say, what is my professional responsibility there? Am I supposed to make the honest opinion here? Or am I supposed to pass this design, even though this might be flawed design? Those kind of things. Then analyze global environmental impact, analyze economic and societal impact, and then make informed judgment based on above factors. So very similar to what we did SO1, SO5, SO4 is done very similarly in there. So here is the complete rubric. Just let's go through part of that and then we'll see exactly what is coming in there. So performance indicator, let's take one. Performance indicator number one, recognize and apply the appropriate code of ethics to engineering situations at hand. Beginning means does not recognize the appropriate code of ethics. That's it. The student failed to recognize what code of ethics are applied to this particular problem. That means still the learning stage. Developing stage will be recognize, was able to find the correct code of ethics, but doesn't know how to apply that correctly in there. So that's developing. So you got certain things, don't understand certain things in there. Accomplished means not only correctly recognize, but correctly apply also. Then exemplary will be correctly recognize, correctly apply, and at the same time, you look into the engineering situation at hand, justifying his or her approach. So just why did I pick this? Why did I use this? That justifying the approach there. This is the reason why I did this. That is what is all about in there. And similarly, like I said, that you can look into all these different ones there. 5 of the indicators we had. And let's look into one more. Analyze global and environmental impact of proposed engineering solutions. Okay. The student who is in the beginning stage does not analyze global and environmental impact. Does not apply, does not analyze. Partially analyze. Did certain things right, certain things wrong, or look into some angle, did not include all different angles of the global environmental impact of that kind of thing in there. The one which is accomplished means, yeah, sure, it applies correctly, but didn't justify the approach. Exemplary will be, I'm going to give you everything. I know exactly, correctly apply, analyze all the impact, global impact, environmental impact in there. And this is why I did this. This is why I applied that. Justify my approach. Again, like I said, you could decide to use all different, you don't have to use beginning, developing, accomplished, exemplary. You can use anything you want in there. The idea is that we should be able to identify their weakest parts. What do they don't understand? If I simply say this thing, hold one question there, or average out all these indicators in there. If I average out everything there, it's no good. Because now we are not able to identify what did they understand. Did they understand economic societal impact? Or they just were not able to recognize the code of ethics. Suppose out of these 5 indicators, the large all the students, let's say, for example, all the students, they were not able to recognize the code of ethics and correctly apply in there. And everything else they say, correctly recognize the appropriate professional responsibilities, analyze global and environmental impact in there, but they're not able to identify the appropriate code of ethics using their own code of ethics. Then all the other part of the problem there, they did excellent job. If you average out, comes out 90%. And you say, oh, or comes out 80%. You say everything is good. Well, it's really not good because they are not able to recognize what code of ethics are applicable. That is why, again, it is so important we do not average out any of these indicators here and look into each indicator and try to satisfy each indicator, because each indicator indicate part of the problem. And we want to make sure if we got 5 parts of the problem, analyze all 5, correctly and the student is able to do all 5 correctly, that means the students understand everything. That's the idea. So next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly go over the rest of the indicators here for all the other outcomes there. We're not going to go the rubric and all that kind of thing in there. So indicators or performance criteria, whatever you want to call them. SO2, an ability to apply engineering design to produce solutions that meet a specified need with consideration of public health, safety, welfare, as well as global, cultural, societal, environmental, economic factors. So there are too many things here. That's why we have 5 indicators. Identify the specific need of engineering design problem to be solved. So got the need, I identify the specific need of the design problem. Describe the limitation constraints, considering technical factors and aspects of public health, safety, and well-being. Describe the limitation constraints of the design problem. Now you consider global, cultural, societal, environmental, economic effects. Now you propose different solutions and select the best possible solution based on established criteria. Solve the engineering design problem, considering limitations and constraints. As you can see, number 4 is the different solutions, which many times students fail to do that. On a senior design project, design is not there until you have multiple solutions and it's a iterative process. Design is an iterative process. You look into all these and then you come up with a solutions, and you say, this is the best solution because this meets these requirements and all that kind of thing. So that's how you do these indicators there. SO3, communicate effectively, range of the audience. Like I was saying, now this time, because you are judging the student presentation skills, we use the 5 indicators here. Controls and uses appropriate body language, speaking skills to hold the audience attention. Organizes a presentation or written document in a way that makes it easier for the audience to understand. Interact with the audience, being able to understand and answer questions, comment, or the value of contribution from the audience. Prepare written documents using appropriate format and language complying with grammar and spelling. All this is communication. If the student is able to do all this, we say, oh, he got good ability to communicate. You cannot assess communication by saying, this student has a good presentation. Well, that doesn't mean anything. This student could have a good presentation, but not able to answer a single question from the audience. Or has a good presentation, but makes so many errors in there, spelling error, grammatical mistakes, all these kind of things. When we have 3 of those, that becomes a good presentation. Not only that, by having all these different areas there, it is easier for you to come up with a rubric for each of the indicator. Because we are saying that, hey, is using proper format, complying with grammar and spelling rules and those kind of things. And you say some student, does not apply at all. Well, they apply some applies good. Some of the things are maybe spellings are wrong, grammar is okay. Then you come back and then say, well, everything was good, except this student did not use the proper format. Oh, this student did everything, including the proper format. So when you divide these things into indicators, it becomes easier for us to decide how the rubric is going to look like. And that's the whole concept of this thing is the rubric, and you based on the rubric is what you're going to assess there. As of 4 we already did. Ability to function effectively in a team, whose members together provide leadership. So the key here is function effectively, provide leadership, create a collaborative and inclusive environment, establish goals, plan tasks, meet objectives. Those are the things there. And you can combine some of them, but not all of them into one group. So here I have 5 of them in there. Define the roles of team members, assigning them according to teammate strength and weakness to carry out the required task. This will be the function effectively on a team also, because it's telling that everyone is doing according to their strengths and weaknesses in there. But that's one other thing we look into there. Then we say establish team goals, plan tasks, put the timeline, and meet objective resources necessary to achieve it. Then we say function effective in a team by creating a collaborative and inclusive environment. You could have a team which is dysfunctional team. They don't talk to each other. They don't work together. This is a team which is working collaborative and inclusive environment. Then we say they put a timetable together, all the activities to be done on time, and they say this is the time schedule for us. And then members together provide leadership to achieve the team objectives. So you always have somebody in charge, but that's the group take care of everything and they work together and provide leadership. Number 6, ability to develop and conduct experimentation, analyze and interpret data, and use engineering judgment to draw conclusion. All we need in this case is develop and conduct experiment, analyze and interpret data, use judgment to draw conclusion. 3 simple indicators. Develops and performs the experimental following a protocol. Exactly the way you said, this is how it's supposed to be done, and the student does that way. Exemplary will be in that case. Analyze and interpret data obtained in a manner that is consistent with the study model, and then draw the conclusion using engineering judgment. So very simple way to assess SO6 based on 3 indicators.
Still 25 minutes are left.
Yeah, is there any question anymore?
Sir, one more question is there.
Okay.
So the question is particularly for the problem involving calculation such in engineering courses. So that is will be related to summative test. For problems involving calculations such as an engineering courses. Thanks.
Okay, it says the effective assessment for summative test, particularly for problems involving calculations and engineering task. I'm not sure if I understand that question completely, but what I can see here is basically it's talking about that when you have the summative test, well, you need to, again, like we consider this summative test in there. Summative criteria is we are looking everything all together, but again, we have to look into part by parts in order to get the summative evaluation. That's the idea in there. So when you look into the problems which has calculations in engineering courses, that's how we are doing in there. All those engineering courses, when we look into, only SO1 can be satisfied from the engineering problems. Other SOs comes at different areas. For example, SO6 we have comes from the laboratories. Let's go back and what we have here is SO5 comes from senior design project. SO3 also comes from senior design project. Senior design project can assess a lot of different things in there. This can come from any design. It doesn't have to be senior design project. It can be any design problem students are working on, a design project and things like those in there. So that's how we look into these things in there. When we talk about number 7, acquire and apply new knowledge, that has to come from the writing students going work on the internet, finding the information, apply, get the new knowledge, apply it. So it comes from writing a paper. You can ask them to write a technical paper on the current topic, things like those, and that's where this thing will be coming in. So please, whoever posed this question, if you have more explanation what you are looking for, please post it again and we'll look into that. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so now so once we have done all the assessment, the next part comes in the puzzle part of the puzzle is, next part comes in there is developing the continuous improvement plan, because the assessment is all about improving your program. That's all it is about. That's why all these accreditation agencies are looking for assessment, because that's indicate that you can improve the program in there. So then here is the plan is going to be developed in there. Like I said, we don't want to average out all the indicators. So you identify the indicator for a particular outcome which it did not meet the requirement in there. Then you also identify the action plan to implement changes. What are we going to change? So there are sequence of the plan comes in there. Action item will be, some changes might be major, some changes might be minor. If you are almost there, you are not reaching there, you say, okay, let's see if we can make tweak to our exam questions or exam problems or lecture we provide them so that they understand this thing better. That's a minor action. When you have to revise section of your course and introduce something different or things like that, that's a major change. Like I mentioned that when the student did not understand user-defined functions, I start introducing them right in the beginning. The whole concept has to change. I start right from the beginning, and that way by the end of the time they come, when we reach to that section of user-defined function, I say, oh, by the way, you have been using this all along. This is what user-defined functions are. That kind of thing. Then we put in the proper format, header in there, and that kind of thing, and they are done in this particular case. So action item could be major, action item could be minor, and I will show you example here of action plan. I put it when I found that indicator 2 and 3 were not satisfied in my case. Then when are you going to put this action plan in action? When do you think this action plan will be completed? Who is going to do this plan? Who is responsible for the action? And next time, when are you going to reassess this course, this outcome, so you can see whether your action plan is working or not working? By the way, I have seen in the real life that they were in the first year when they did the assessment, they found that only 65% were meeting the criteria, where they want 70% students to meet the criteria for each indicator. Then they they made a lot of changes in their curriculum to make it, to make it 70%. Next time when they assessed, they found now it was only 55%. So they went in the wrong direction. But that's perfectly fine. Idea is continuously improving. So if something is not right, you want to improve, go ahead and improve again in there. So we need to know exactly who is responsible, when are we going to do it, by what date we are completing this, and what are our action plan. So for example, here, when I look into, so this was a heat transfer course I did in spring 2021. It was found that PI 2 and 3, indicator or criteria 2 and 3, were not satisfied. Using established criteria that 80% of the students scored 3 or higher on each of the performance indicator. A score of 3 represents either students were accomplished or exemplary according to the rubric. Rubric was on a scale of 1 to 4. So 3 means 1 was beginner, 2 was developing, 3 was accomplished, 4 was exemplary. So 3 means either students were accomplished or exemplary, and that's what I like to see in there. And I found that was not the right thing in there. So then I said, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take certain homework problem, complex in nature. I'm going to take one project, and I'm going to take one problem, exam problem, each from exams 1, 2, and 3, or the final exam. There, when you are taking one indicator, you can average out one indicator for the entire course. That's perfectly okay. So my PI2, using from one homework problem, project, exam, those I can average out, but not different PIs averaging out in there. So this is what my action plan was. I say I'm going to assign more homework problems. Students didn't have enough homework problems, so they are not able to solve too many problems. So let's assign more homework problem there. Assign more projects. Not only that, the thing with the project is we need to discuss those projects in the class. What our expectations are. A student can ask questions if they're having problem understanding exactly what we need to do in there. It gives opportunity to the students to discuss the problem ahead of time before they solve it in there. Then I'm going to spend extra time on reviewing heat transfer fundamentals. Even solve more problem in the class. And I don't have to solve the entire problem. I can lay out the steps. Hey, look at these kind of things in there. This is how you have planned to solve the problem. These are the steps. And this is what you will get at the end after that kind of thing in there. And then I say, let's assign one more course. To make sure that problem is not with the method of assessment. And then I say, I'm going to reassess 2 years from now in spring 2023. Assign a faculty member who regularly teaches this course to perform the outcome assessment again. I did it before, so I say I'm going to do it again, but you need to assign a faculty member regularly teaching this course in there. Okay, let's open for the discussion. We got about 14 minutes. Any question? Anything there? Look into that.
Sir, no questions, sir.
Well, let's wait if somebody has to. Let's encourage them to. Please go ahead and raise your question. And we'll try to, we have 13 minutes. We'll try to answer the question so that you understand this whole concept of assessment in there. If somebody wants to talk about that instead of posting that, I think we can entertain that too. We can unmute their microphone, somebody raise the hand or something, but we can do that way also. Any questions? Please feel free to ask any question. This is the material you have to absorb and you have to understand, but we want to make sure that if you have any doubts, anything there, that's what we need to do. The thing I think the question has come up a couple of times about the summative test in there. Of course, we have the test, at the end of the semester, which is going to be including all the material, comprehensive test, we call it in there. What you need to do is you need to identify the problem maybe toward the later part of the material covered in the course. Because by that time, students have learned all different kind of knowledges from the very beginning to the end there. They might not be able to understand fully in the beginning when they're just taking the course, but at the end, they should understand everything. So we need to identify the problem in this test, summative test, which was the material which was covered toward the end of the course, end of the semester, because that means that everything they learned before is applicable by that time then. I think that's what we need to do it in there. Did that answer the question for someone who was asking the question about this? Any other questions? We got about 10 minutes here. Let me know if any question, but let me just again emphasize and repeat what we have said in there in briefly. First
Sir,
of all,
can you please explain in a one conclusion statement, what are the ABET like outcomes are for the students?
what the average outcomes are?
Yes, sir, average outcome for the
Okay.
students. Because
But
every student is not a like is a good student. Everybody is not having the good knowledge about their courses. So
yeah,
average students are also there. So for that we are only having these outcomes. So what is there any
no,
change
we
in the
don't.
outcomes for the student to student?
Well, it's not a question of having these outcomes only for average student. I think the idea is that in the class, like we set the criteria whether 70% of the student or 80% of the student understand and gain the knowledge what we are talking about in there. You can never have anywhere will be 100% there. So when you talk about average student, that's why you need to divide your rubric. And you can divide the rubric into 5 different categories, 5 different areas there. Like we said, and consider from there is, we say, instead of going to the 4, which is beginner, exemplary, and accomplish and developing, instead of going into 4, going to the 5 scale of 5, which is from 1 to 5, and you say 3 and higher, and 3 will be your average student. So now your average student is there in 3, and 4 and 5 will be your exemplary or a good student, and 2 and 1 will be poor student. Even if in this case, if you fail to accomplish 70% of the students in the class meeting the requirement of 3 or higher, that means that you need to change the method of instructions, or you make some changes in your classes. Because I think what it comes to is that the thing you need to think about is that when the student, we say average, we talk about average student. Average student are the one which need some extra help. And that's why when I put this schedule together saying that I'm going to assign more homework problem, the students who are good, they don't need more homework problem to do. They don't need the discussion of the project in the class. But this is what I'm doing extra, and this is typically is geared toward the average student. We say, hey, let's look into more homework problem. And we tell the student, if you don't understand some problems, feel free to come stop by and talk to us. Encouraging them to discuss with you is one way you can improve the performance of the average student. If average student spend a lot of time discussing with you, chances are they will understand better. So that's why we say, when you assign the project, typically we go and assign the project and the students submit the project. Well, half of the students don't even understand what they were supposed to submit. So then we say, okay, we'll discuss the project in the class, tell you exactly what we are looking for, what you need to do. According to that, then you submit the project. That's the idea of reviewing discuss the project in the class there. Then solving more problems. Again, review the overall fundamentals. So these are all geared towards average student, because a good student will look at the material one time and try to use it and they will understand. These are the average students who we need to help. And those students are the one which we say, okay, let's do more problem in the class. And we have limited time in the class. So we might not have all the time in the class to solve every single problem completely. But we say, okay, let's plan the solution of this problem. Let's look at what are the different equations we need to use. And what is the approach we're going to use? And that's what we are talking about, your outcome 1. Basically, that's what comes. And then we discuss that, some problem steps and all those kind of things. And we say, okay, now all you have to do it is start substituting numbers from the beginning, and you will be okay in this particular case. So those are the things which are geared towards average student. That's what we are talking about. Okay. Any more questions?
Thank you, sir, for your wonderful explanation. Sir, only the 5 minutes are left.
Yeah, let's see if anybody has any other question we can
Yes,
answer.
there is no questions from the participants still.
Well, give them a minute here in case somebody decide to ask something.
Oh,
They,
okay,
they
sir.
always ask questions when we are done. Then they will say, oh, I wish I could have asked this question. Well, don't be afraid. You can ask questions now. You don't have to wait and say, oh, later on that I should have asked this question there. Okay? So ask any question. We got about 5 more minutes here. Otherwise, we're going to stop the presentation. Any more questions? So let me just summarize and then we'll close the session there. Summarize will be, keep in mind that we always need to include all the elements of a outcome in our indicators. We never average out the score from different indicators. Same indicator is okay. At different places you got in a same course, you got indicator measure at different places, same indicator, you can average that out. But don't average all indicators together there. Always look into only on a 2-year cycle or a 3-year cycle. Don't try to assess every single outcome in every single course. We got, typically we have engineering courses, they might be 25, 30 engineering courses. There's no reason to do that. If you got a larger class size, pick a sample, but the sample should be random sample. It should not be a particular group of students. Pick a random sample represent the entire sample of the data. Entire class it will represent. So pick a random sample there. Use that particular one there. Never use grades because grades going to mask the weaknesses. A student having C grade might be weak in particular area, but good in certain areas. In order to put the improvement plan together, we need to know exactly what we need to improve for the student. What learning they are not getting. Unless we understand what learning they are missing, how can we improve their learning? If you don't understand, what are they missing? When you do the grades, when you do the averaging, you mask those areas. You don't understand that because most of the time you say, okay, I'm averaging out all these indicators together, come up with a grade average for the entire outcome. And if that outcome does not meet, I have no idea what to do. I simply say, well, it doesn't meet. Maybe you need to do something in the course. Then you rely on the faculty suggesting that, well, maybe I think they didn't understand this. Maybe they were having problem. I noticed they were having problem in this area. They were having problem in this area. Let's try to change that. But now you're relying on the instructor observation, instructor opinion there. Not observable fact in there. Observed fact is, let's keep the indicator separate. Then we know exactly what they are missing and what they are not missing. The last point I want to emphasize, which I did before in there briefly, was if you, let's say you have 5 indicators in one particular outcome. All those 5 indicators you do not have to be assessed in the same course. You can assess 3 or 4 indicators in one course. You can assess 1 or 2 indicators in a different course or a project or anywhere else. And with that, if there is no question, I'm going to close the session. Thank you for attending. I hope you gained something out of this outcome assessment part. And you have a wonderful day now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your wonderful
Yep.
session.
Okay, good enough.
Thank you, sir, once again.